You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today, just like any other day, we have another special guest for the show. We're going to be talking to Hince. She is going to tell us about her life journey, but also being a spiritual teacher, public speaker, and she is also an author. And I just want to first say thank you for taking time out of your schedule to talk to us today. And how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for allowing me to come and share my story.
So let's start into this, man, because this is pretty interesting. First and foremost, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and also about your book and other things that you do to help shed light to what you have for your platform.
Okay. I live in California now. I'm actually from England, so I have a mid-Atlantic accent. And I am sharing my story. I wrote my book to talk through my story because I wanted to remember all the steps that I had gone through so someone else could do the same thing if they wanted to. But I have developed some abilities that I didn't even know were possible before. I didn't know it was possible to put your awareness inside your body and shift bones, which is what I have ended up doing. So I'm basically sharing that story with others so that they know how much power we have within us and that they can also access those abilities if they want to.
And I mean, right off the bat, that's going to be a hook for the listener, because they're going to be asking, how in the world does that even happen? So explain a little bit about what that means and how you basically figured that was something that was possible.
Okay, so it's quite a long story. I've been working through this process for getting on to 20 years now, but I had a lot of trauma in childhood. I know a lot of us do, and it's different for everyone, but I was born with my right foot up against my right shin and had physical therapy for the first 6 weeks of my life. And then I was adopted, and then we started to move around the world. We had a house fire. I saw the flames coming through my bedroom wall ceiling. And so that was, another trauma. I was sent to a boys' boarding school. I was the first girl boarder at a boys' boarding school. So I was teased mercilessly for 2 years. And then my teenage years, both parents became alcoholics. My dad already had anger issues, so I was very comfortable walking on eggshells. I knew how to do that very well. And then when I was 19, I woke up one morning and found my mother dead on the bathroom floor. So those are all kind of traumas that lived within me, and I didn't know what to do with them. I just carried on with what I had always done, which was just carry on with life and keep everything hidden inside. I think a lot of us do that because we don't know how to let things go. I didn't even know therapy existed, so I wasn't going to go that route for sure. And so I just carried on with life. I moved out to California, became a software engineer, got married, had kids. And then one day in my late 30s, I had a business altercation with a couple of other mothers at school where they, who were very self-assured, self-confident, authority type women, they told me I'd done something wrong. And I was this fearful person on the inside, and my mind just span out of control. It actually went on for about 3 days. I couldn't sleep. It just went back and forth of everything that had happened, what they'd said, what I'd said, just couldn't let it go. And I realized at that point that this isn't normal. I don't think other people would react this intensely to the small thing that had happened. And that's when I realized it felt a little bit like how I would react when my dad told me I'd done something wrong. And that's when I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something from childhood that I need to look at, maybe that will help me in the future. So that was kind of the start of the journey. I didn't actually do anything right then because I didn't know what to do, but it was in that time frame I went to a doctor's appointment, and he happened to be a holistic physician. And he recognized that I was more stressed than I should be. I wasn't going there for stress. I don't remember why I went to see him, but it was nothing to do with emotions. But he recognized I was stressed, and he asked me on a scale of 0 through 10 what my stress level was. And I said it was an 8 out of 10. And then he asked me why. And it was that question that made me realize, oh, it was my mother's death, which is now 20 years earlier, because the tears were still just under the surface all these years later, and I hadn't dealt with them. So he happened to know this technique. It's called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. It's also called tapping, because we tap on certain places on our body as we're talking through something. It's a little weird, but he used this technique with me for about 15 minutes. And I walked away from that appointment being able to tell the story of her death in my mind without the tears there anymore. And that's when I realized that we keep all those emotions and memories stored physically in our body, and that we can let them go. And that was eye-opening to me.
Man, that's pretty heavy. When you were able to have that, I guess, release, is that the right way to put it?
Yeah.
How did that impact just you personally and your outlook towards, just life and just day-to-day business?
Well, it was a relief. It felt freeing, because I'd never experienced anything like that before. But I knew it was also just the first step. So I went home that day and I went online and learned all about this technique. It was given away by the person who developed it, Gary Craig, for free. So anyone could go online and learn it. It's really easy to learn. And I wanted to check it out because I wasn't sure, it was a one-time thing, 15 minutes. I wasn't really convinced that it was going to work. So I wanted to check it out. And at the time, I had a 17-year-old cat at home who we'd just told needed daily saline shots, like injections of saline solution. And I was the one who had to do it. So the first time I gave him a shot, my hand was shaking so much. I was so afraid of giving him this shot that I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it every day. So I thought, well, this is a great test case. So I tapped about it. I tapped about every aspect of it, which is part of what we do with EFT. So I tapped about my hand shaking. I tapped about my fear of hurting my cat. And I tapped about all the memories I've had from all the injections, because I've lived all over the world. I had so many injections. So I tapped about all of those things. And then the next day, when I gave him the shot, the needle just slid right in. There was no more fear left inside of me. And that's when I realized two things. I realized that EFT is deceptively powerful because it doesn't really look like it's doing much, but I really realized it really was. And I realized that freedom is on the other side of the emotions, on the other side of the fear. And that's where I wanted to get to, because I lived in fear. So to me, that was huge. So that's when I started using it. I started using it every day. I started noticing when I was feeling emotional or reactionary, and I would tap to bring myself back to peace in the moment. And I noticed things shifting. I noticed myself becoming a little more peaceful inside, and I wanted more. So I wrote down every emotional memory I could think of from childhood, which was multiple pages. And I tapped through one each night for about an hour to an hour and a half each night, until I'd gone through them all. And life started changing. I started being peaceful inside. My mind, which had been so busy and so negative and so critical, was becoming quiet. And I remember opening my kitchen door one day and actually saying to myself, it feels like I'm living in a different reality, because all those words and those judgments in my mind were no longer there anymore. And I hadn't even known that was possible. And that's actually when I realized that the words that we replay in our mind were actually programmed with those in childhood. So I recognized that they had been my dad's words, but I could not see that until they had gone out of my mind.
So you found a way, you found a way to confront the past and the trauma. And through that, you mentioned peace. When you started to feel stress not overwhelming you, did that also help you towards just living day to day? Like how was living day to day versus when you were stressed out?
Well, absolutely. It changes, right? It's got to change, right? If you're feeling at peace, you're actually more relaxed, right? So things then change. I think of ourselves as a signal, and we're emitting a signal all the time, and we're attracting back into our future based on that signal. So if I'm feeling stressed or fearful all the time, I'm actually holding myself in tension, and that is my signal. So I'm attracting more stress and more tension back into my future. But if I can be relaxed during the day, that's what I'm attracting back. So everything changes, and relationships change, right? Because if I'm feeling peaceful, I'm going to be showing up with someone else in a different way than I was before. So the interactions are going to be more peaceful. So everything changed.
And once again, talking to Ann Hince here on Refocus Radio. Now, quick question. Do you, in addition to those practices that you mentioned, do you also do meditation or anything else that are exercises for you to, release and, calm down and kind of clear your thoughts?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I actually never wanted to meditate, and I don't meditate. I was actually in a group at the time when I started using this technique, EFT, and the head of the group, the guru type guy, would say every week, he would say, you don't need to meditate. It's all about feeling your feelings. So at the time, I was just starting EFT, so I didn't even know what my feelings were. But as the weeks went by and I did more and more of this tapping, I actually became aware of my feelings, of the physical sensations underneath the emotions. So, we use the words for emotions like I'm mad or I'm sad or I'm frustrated. But what we're really describing is how we're holding that tension in our body. So I started to become aware of those sensations. Now, I couldn't have done that at the beginning, or in the beginning, I didn't have that awareness. But just doing the tapping over the months actually expands the awareness. It opens up the subconscious mind and expands the awareness. So when I became aware of those feelings, then I did what this guy said. He said, it's all about feeling your feelings. So I actually taught myself how to do that. It sounds so simple, right? Anyone should be able to feel their feelings, but I had suppressed my feelings for 40, 50 years at that point, and they wanted to stay suppressed. So I actually had to teach myself how to do it. And I would do it while I was doing the dishes at the kitchen sink. I'd noticed when I was thinking a thought that had some emotion behind it. So for me, it was normally a fearful thought. I would find where I was holding that fear in my body, which for me would normally be my stomach or my solar plexus. I would focus on that fear living in my stomach and feel it. And I had to actually hold myself like a statue and stop breathing in order to focus on that fear. And I would just feel it. And I would just, words are really difficult to express this, but I would just accept that feeling inside of my stomach, that fear, because it hadn't been accepted before. It had always been squashed down, kept inside. So it just wanted to be felt. And when I would feel it for long enough, I would actually need to take a deep breath. And at that moment, there would be a shift. The fear would dissipate slightly. So then I would think the thought again, feel that fear again, and allow it to shift. And I would do that over and over again with the same thought until all the emotion underneath it had released, at which point that thought is then free. There's no longer any emotional attachments to me with that thought. So then I started doing this during the day. Instead of tapping, I would feel my feelings. And in the evening, instead of doing the tapping that I was doing on my childhood, I would lay on the sofa and bring collective traumas to mind, something like 9/11 or the Loma Prieta earthquake I was in. I would bring the memories to mind of that event, feel all those physical sensations inside of my body, and just allow them to be felt. And they would dissipate, they would let go. And it was a huge relief to allow all that energy that had been stuck inside to just release. So that was kind of the second part of my journey. It felt like the second step.
And so you are on this journey of finding out how to deal with life, trauma, and in the issues of life. And it sounds like you been able to use a way to address it and acknowledge that it's actually there.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see it more as stuck energy than being attached to it. Right? I'm not attached to the event with the emotion anymore. I just see that emotion as stuck energy, and I have to find a way to allow it, to feel it, and then it will release. So that was something that I was learning along the way. So then I was laying down on the sofa doing this work each night, and at some point, I actually noticed that I could keep my awareness inside my body after the emotion had dissipated. So it was a really weird thing to experience at the time. And I think it is for other people. I've actually walked a couple of other people through this phase, and they know how weird it feels. But imagine you have a toothache or a stomach ache. You can feel where that pain is coming from, right? You can feel it inside of you. Yeah?
Oh, yeah. I can definitely feel whenever something hurts.
But once the pain has gone, once the ache has gone, you can't put your awareness back inside to where it was coming from, because there's no longer anything calling your attention to it. Yeah?
Yeah.
And I found that I could. So I started to play around with it. And I've done it once now. Can I do it another time? And I found I could. And then, well, what can I do now that I can do this? So I would move my awareness around inside, and I found that I could find a place that had tension or a place that had no tension. So I would find tension, and then I would hold my awareness on it, just like I was doing with the physical sensations. But now I'm actually inside the body, focusing on tension. And when I would focus on it long enough, I would feel a shift, just like outside with the physical sensations. So then I would do it again and again and again, and the tension would dissipate. So I started moving around my body and just letting this tension go. And it took many, many months, but eventually I could put my awareness inside my head. And that was eye-opening, because I had no idea how much pain I had inside my left cheek. And the forces pulling my bones out of alignment were just huge, just incredible forces. And I had no idea. I had been living with these forces and this pain because it wasn't new. It was just something I had become aware of. So I'd been living with these forces for 50 years, and I had no idea. All those years, I had no idea how much pain and tension was inside. But now I had a tool. I had a technique that I could use. I could just focus on it a little bit at a time. And to begin with, I could only do it for a couple of seconds because it was so painful. But over the months and now years, I can focus for a long time. And I actually now hear and feel the adhesions in the connective tissue release. And it sounds and feels like old fabric ripping. But over time, I can actually now feel my bones relax into a more aligned position as the tension in the connective tissue has released. I think of it as dis-ease, right? It's actually tension that's stored inside, and it's just dis-ease, and I'm releasing that a little bit at a time. And so I actually had some x-rays taken last year compared to 2013. You can actually see that my eye sockets had shifted, and I didn't even know those bones would move. And my jaw was way off to the side, and it's now more centered. And my neck, which was always very bent from being born with my foot up against my shin when I was, born, it's unwinding. My whole body is unwinding. My neck is straightening, and I have grown 1/2 inch as a 55-year-old because I have been releasing this tension inside.
Man, that's very, that's very interesting. Someone listening to this right now is going to probably have some questions, because you also believe that everything happens for a reason. How does that play a role with you doing this to release tension?
Well, I don't really think the reasons are very good reasons. I think we're programmed in childhood. We're programmed to feel those emotions, and we're taught to hold them in. And when we hold them in, that becomes part of our signal. and it's part of our signal, it emits that signal and it attracts similar feelings and thoughts back to us again. So it's not something we choose, we're just programmed with, and we don't really realize that we're programmed, but we end up feeling the same things over and over again until we notice what we're feeling and allow that stuck energy to release. And then it's no longer a part of our signal. And that's, I believe, how we change our future.
That's a good segue to the next question. So, when practicing this, how have you seen this benefit your lifestyle as far as you just said moments ago, being able to change our future? Is it so much that we are just stuck in old ways of thinking and looking, or how does that work?
We are so stuck. But the thing is that I learned, is that we're not aware of it, right? I couldn't see the words in my mind until they had gone. I couldn't see that they had been my dad's words. I didn't have the awareness of this tension inside until I got to that place where I was ready to feel that tension inside. So much of it is just unconscious to us. We're just not aware of it. So once we start addressing it, then things start changing, but we have to keep going to actually access what's stored inside of us. So then going back to your question about what things changed, as I said, everything changes. A lot of people, I think that this kind of journey is work, right? And that it's not a fun process to go through. But it feels really, really good to let go of tension that has been stored in the body for decades, right? It has to feel good, and it does. And as you go through the process, you're releasing that burden that you've been carrying around all these years. And it's an energetic burden, right? It makes us, I remember feeling so heavy throughout my 20s and 30s, just energetically heavy. So as we release the energy stored inside from our past, that burden is released and we feel lighter, and it becomes easier to laugh and to smile, right? That we don't have that heaviness inside of us anymore. Plus, as he said, interactions are better. I live in peace most of the time during the day now. And I didn't used to. I used to be living in the past, right? My thoughts were in the past or in the future, living in fear. And now I'm very much present during the day, and I enjoy anything pretty much that happens. And if I don't enjoy something, because I will actually go out of my way to see what triggers me now, then I know I can work on that and actually heal at a deeper level. But one of the other fun things that I've only realized in the last couple of years is I now know that our head or our skull is our echo chamber for our voice. So as we release tension in our skull, our voice actually changes. So I've always loved singing to myself in the car, mostly in the car on my own, never anyone else, and in the shower. And there were some notes that I couldn't sing before because I had so much tension in my head. So as I've been releasing the tension in the head, my voice has changed. And I can sing notes now that I could never sing before. So to me, that's just one really fun thing that's happened along the way.
Yeah, I'm a visual person. So as I'm hearing you talk, I think person listening to this should listen with like an open mind, because what I hear too is visually. Imagine a person holding a backpack, and throughout life, you just have all this junk inside that backpack. And the longer you carry it, the heavier it gets throughout time. And until you address what's in there, you'll be carrying a very, very heavy backpack.
Yeah, and that goes back to, the releasing of the disease, which is also tension in the connective tissue. We tend to shrink as we get older, as that tension just tightens more and more. So this whole process has been a releasing of that tension in the connective tissue. And I believe that's probably why I grew, right? So I do believe it can reverse that aspect of aging.
Man, once again, talking to our special guest for today, and Hince. Before we wrap this up, what else do you have for our audience to share that we haven't touched on yet?
Okay, I love to bring it back to the present and what's happening presently. There is so much happening, and we often think we have no control over it. But if we're watching the news and we're feeling frustrated, or we're blaming some politician or some country for something that they're doing, our part of that equation is how we feel about it. So if we can actually notice how we're feeling, that's the first part. But if we can notice we're feeling frustrated or angry, we can use a technique like tapping or EFT or feeling our feelings and actually let that emotion go out of us and bring ourselves back to peace, because then that's what we're attracting into our future, right? So we all have more control than we think we do, and we can work with that.
Once again, True down there talking to you, and Hince here on I Am Refocused Radio. When people go and look for you online, what's the best way to find you and other resources that you have?
Okay, I have my book that's called A Pathway to Insights. So you can find that on Amazon. I have my YouTube channel, which has a demonstration of using EFT that you can watch and a demonstration of feeling your feelings that you can watch. I'm also going to start doing some live stream tapping sessions on there. I'm going to do one actually about the recent school shooting. So you can go on there and actually tap along and see how it helps you. And I also have a website, annhince.com, where you can see the x-rays and realize that it really, really is a powerful technique. And I have a public Facebook page and a Facebook group that you're welcome to look at.
Well, once again, I want to say thank you, Ann Hince, for not just being on the show and sharing your story, which I think it makes a lot of sense when you learn about you and your personal life and what you had to go through, but you managed to not just survive it, but to use it for something very positive. I want to say thank you for taking time in your schedule to talk to us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having a platform to share this information.
I Am Refocused Radio is brought to you by Foo 4 Star and Holy Crab. Foo 4 Star is a family-owned Asian restaurant in San Antonio, Texas. We have been a local favorite for Asian cuisine for over 10 years. With nothing but full smiles and fast service, you'll be leaving satisfied. Come on in for some authentic Vietnamese food. Holy Crab is one-of-a-kind Cajun Creole-style seafood restaurant located in Universal City, Texas. We offer traditional seafood items as well as chicken and steak. We also offer seafood boils. Come give us a try. You won't be disappointed. You can find these two eateries in Universal City, Texas at 2921 Pat Booker Road.